Hey guys, I'm Franca from GizBot and today we are going to have a word with COAI Director General Rajan Mathews regarding the upcoming budget and on the national telecom policy. So stay tuned. Sir, please tell us about the recommendation expectations you have made for the upcoming budget.
There are about 5 or 6 critical elements that we wanted to bring before the government. Previous years we got zilch, so we're hoping that this year will be a better hit rate. The areas that we've talked about, one is that, look, please reduce the LSU, which is the license fee payable, as well as the spectrum usage charge, both of those which have caused significant erosion in the financial health of the industry. 30% of all of our revenue goes back to the government. So the first thing we said, in order to restore financial health to the industry, please reduce these or remove these as per the recommendations of TROI. That's one. The second one is that, look, please reduce the duties that have now been brought back on 4G LTE equipment. At a time when we are rapidly trying to roll out 4G equipment, most of it of course comes from abroad because we have not developed the IPR rights for 4G. So a good part of it goes back as royalty payments and the stuff. So putting a duty component on this detracts from the government's own initiative of Digital India and pushing out 4G LTE. That's the second one. The third one is having to set up a dedicated institution, a financial institution that will give specialized loans to the industry for long-term projects. You know that these are 20-year gestation period. Most of the investment has to happen upfront. So giving loans at preferential rates and preferential amounts over longer terms is another area that we've asked for this type of setup. Also to be able to offer tax-free debt, so this helps in terms of the debt overhang and overload of the industry. The other area is, of course, in the reduction of the GST rate. We went from a service rate of 15 to a GST rate of 18. The DOT has requested that it be brought down to 12. We're hoping that it will be brought down to even lower, 5%, because this is an essential service. The common man, the Ahmad, everybody uses it. So it's unfair to burden the lower echelons of our population with this type of a GST rate. So that's the other area. The fifth area that we've talked about is that the duties that have been imposed on imported components for optical fiber. Optical fiber, as you know, is a critical component of the success of Digital India, because without fiberization, 5G is not going to happen. So we've said the components for manufacture of optical fiber, which is a good news story for India. We export a lot of fiber. We're one of the leading manufacturers. So some of the component pieces should not attract import duty, and the GST rate should be brought down to a reasonable amount, not the present 12 or 18% that is imposed on that. Bring it down to a reasonable amount of money. And the final one we've said is that our distributors usually sell our prepaid packs and our recharge packs on a less than MRP basis. So if an MRP is 100 rupees, the distributor usually gets it for 15 rupees or 85 rupees with a 15% discount. Now that is being taxed as income by the revenue department, and then when it's taxed as income, there's a 5% withholding. Now these are your small kirana shops, your small, what we call the panwalas of the world. Having them go through this 5% withholding tax and all of this takes away the cash flow from them and puts them in a financial tough spot. So we're saying is that put it at 1%, a nominal 1%, and then have done with it. So these are some of the main asks that we've highlighted for the finance ministry.
So yesterday government has come up with economic survey where they have already mentioned about the new entrant has disrupted the market a lot. Your comments on the same?
So I think it's as obvious as the nose on everyone's face, right? So this has been going on for the last 3 years. We've been highlighting this. We've been saying that the financial plight of the industry is severe and it's detrimental to the ongoing Digital India program of the Honorable Prime Minister. You can see that when demonetization happened, it was the financial institutions that relied on our networks to pick up the slack and to make sure that the common citizen was not overly disenfranchised. So here we see how critical the network is. It's critical to ongoing services, it's critical to government services, it's critical to 4G, it's critical to 5G, and if you're going to stay on the lead of 5G and become a knowledge country, our networks are it. And as you can see, we've now gone from number of 13 operators in any circle now to 3. private ones and one PSU, which is BSNL MTNL. So you can see the severe financial stress in the industry, and we're glad that the government has acknowledged this in a public document that outlines. So it's no longer just the industry crying hoarse about the matter. We are very pleased that the government has now acknowledged it. The only question is, can we now move from a perspective of milking the industry for revenue? Today, 30% of every rupee that comes in goes back to the government. We are one of the largest payers of money to the government. Can we go from being seen as a milk cow, all right, to seen as a contributor to development, which is what we really are? And so change the focus so you help the industry get back on its feet, help the industry to move forward, incentivize the industry. We're not asking for handouts from the government. We're saying, give us the incentives, which is what the government itself is talking about, saying is that let's move from a carrot and stick approach to more of a carrot incentivized approach. And I think that is clearly where we need to be. Some of the items that we've highlighted for relief are clearly necessary. We've talked about the reduction in the license fee. We've talked about reduction in SUC. We've talked about reduction in the rate of the debt that is now payable to the government. We're saying is that take this spectrum, don't classify it as a service. Today, as no part in the world is the grant of spectrum seen as a service of the government, which attracts 18% GST. So these types of added burdens on the industry should be done away with. See it as an enabler of growth and of development. And as per the Honorable Prime Minister's new slogan, ease of living. That's what we are all about.
So how much the industry has lost ever since the new entrant came in terms of revenue wise and percentage wise?
The revenue stream, the top line revenue stream has eroded by upwards of 40%. All right, so almost halving of the revenue stream of most of the major operators. Some of the operators, as you well know, have just closed shop, either sold their resources or gotten out of the market because they've seen that it's not sustainable. So yes, the government has recognized there's been a severe erosion of revenue, and if your top line deteriorates substantially, there's not a whole lot to pick up from the crumbs.
Sir, what about your comments on the consolidation in the sector? That Idea and the Vodafone is going to be announce their merger in first week of April, if I'm not wrong. There are news. So your comments on the same?
So I think we're very pleased that the government's ease of doing business has really kicked in. Mr. Victorio Clau has also made the same observation, saying is that, look, this whole process of consolidation between Idea and Voda has gone on speedily, effectively, quickly, with nobody really trying to hold up things. So in the span of a year, we've got to the point where the merger will, we expect, go through, and 1st of April, the combined entities can start operating. It's just, again, you want to remove the cloud and any apprehension, because again, this is a fiercely competitive market. No operator, either alone or in combination, can afford to go forward with its hand tied with uncertainty. I think this is a good thing that the government has done, and it really highlights the ease of doing business application.
So do you think that it will going to help the industry when it comes to revenue wise and all?
So I think most academicians, when they looked at competitiveness in an industry, have indicated that 3 to 4 operators are necessary for a robust competitive market. So I think having a strong entity like VodafoneIdea, I think, contributes to the competitive environment and ensures that no one operator becomes overly dominant and overly the one that drives pricing in the industry. That's perhaps not a good place to be. And so I think having that combination as a strong player is very helpful.
So there is, like, you have made any recommendation regarding FDA have 100% when it comes to telecom and all?
So
automatic route?
Yes, we have said that that should be open to the thing. Of course, there are security concerns. The government will ensure that those are in place. But we have supported that because, again, as I said, when you look at the scope and scale, the domestic banks are already over leveraged, right? If you look at the total amount of debt that the industry has, 460,000 crore rupees, right? The bulk of it, or a good portion of it, 35-40%, is held by domestic banks. They've, tapped out on their capacity and appetite for debt to the industry. So where is the industry going to go? We can't go to the government. So we have to rely on FDIs and borrowings from.
So you are talking to
sources.
government, you are talking to Ministry and Telecom Ministry regarding the
So
same?
our operators, our member operators, because some of them have different needs, if you will, in terms of how they tap the foreign markets, the equity and the debt and all of that. So I think the structure of how the infusion of foreign funds is going to come in is up to the individual members. But overall, we do support 100% FDI into the industry.
So what about the NTP? Government is working on telecom policy, right? So your views on the same?
So very apt, very timely, I think very comprehensive, very inclusive. I think both the TRAI and the DOT have gone out, asked all of the stakeholders, including citizen groups, to participate. So I think it's a very well planned, very well executed program, and I think it will throw up some very, very good policy directions for the country. So we'll wait. I think
The government will also calculate the pricing of 700 megahertz in the 5G in this NTP. Do you think so?
I think there'll be some general guidance. Policy does not go specifically to the pricing of specific bands. I think it'll go towards a general policy guideline which says that spectrum needs to be made in adequate quantities and at affordable prices. I think those would probably be the policy decision, which means that you can't continue to extract premium rates for spectrum.
So now the 2018 is here, and where if you can highlight some challenges for this year.
So I think financial stability through market pricing is going to be a critical factor, because unless that settles down, it's going to be very hard to raise money, right? If you don't have a stable, predictable revenue stream, getting additional equity or getting additional funding through debt is going to be a challenge. So to address the financial condition of the industry, we've got to make sure that the market stabilize. The second thing is that we've got to look
When you are expecting a market to be stabilized?
So we're saying is that the regulator has to look at how is there are means and ways by which markets can be stabilized, right? Market intervention is not unheard of. RBI intervenes, finance ministry intervenes when there are anomalies seen in the marketplace. So if the government sees that there are anomalies which are detrimental to the economy, then obviously they have to intervene to do so. We leave it up to the government because they've made the observation. So that is one thing. Secondly, we're saying is that the government should reduce the levies on the industry, right? That's the second one. So financial health of the industry has those two components. Right away is the next major issue. We are facing a significant amount of hurdles from local municipalities in terms of establishing our cell towers and laying fiber. Without that, again, digital India is at risk. So that's the second major issue. And then, of course, the third major issue.
You're talking about BharatNet?
BharatNet is one component where the government is laying fiber, but private players are also.
Now the private players are also participating in the second phase, no?
Yeah, but remember, that is only from the Gram Panchayat to block headquarters. What about the rest of our cities, right, where the great demand is, right? We've got to lay fiber in our urban areas, semi-urban areas, wire up our buildings. All of these are challenges. We've got to get cell towers in densely populated areas because of the demand and coverage, right? People have been complaining of drop calls, and we're saying you can't address that unless you give us permission to put up cell towers. Spectrum has got to be made available. So the whole issue of right-of-way is a critical bottleneck that, unless addressed, is going to hamper the development of the industry and the development of the country. So those are at least two main areas. And of course, the third area is ease of doing business. There are whole components under ease of doing business that have been highlighted. But those would be the critical elements.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.